It's not just Donald Trump who is chaotic and unhinged. It's the Department of Justice for Donald Trump as well, who are taking increasingly outrageous positions in front of federal judges, losing their credibility and the patience of the judges as well, as federal judges fire back against the Trump administration's executive orders, 32 cases in just 15 days and 4 different temporary restraining orders. But my focus here on this hot take, here on Legal AF, is going to be on the outrageous, intellectually bankrupt positions taken by the Department of Justice under Donald Trump's quote unquote leadership. He wants to be the chief law enforcement officer of the world as the executive branch head, which is what the Federalist Society and Heritage Foundation tells you. Then all of these crazy positions that are being taken, which are rapidly losing. The only thing that a lawyer has that's worth anything in a court of law is that person's credibility, whether it's with the jury or with the judge. Department of Justice and their version of credibility is in shreds, and I'm going to break it down for you. I'm going to use as my example, and I have a half a dozen of them, a recent filing in the last couple of days in the Rhode Island case before Judge McConnell, in which he found that the quote-unquote attempt to unfreeze the freeze for the order against Donald Trump's administration from blocking federal funding to state and local and public interest firms, in other words, turn off the spigot of the federal dollar off of that temporary restraining order, Donald Trump's Department of Justice was required to file a notice of compliance. And all we got was a notice of noncompliance. It effectively tells the judge, you were wrong. We don't understand your order of restraint, which stops us on its face from doing anything to cut off funding. We don't think it's lawful. We think that we are the superior here. We think we are it violates our separation of powers doctrine. And we don't think it applies to all of the federal agencies under Donald Trump, nor do we think it even applies to the executive order that's at the heart of the case. I'm not making this up. And Judge McConnell has responded by saying, why don't we see all the lawyers for the Department of Justice and the other lawyers in my chambers for a hearing in the courtroom on Thursday, the 8th of February. Now, let me read to you from the filing, which is just a complete middle finger to a federal judge. And I'm going to tell you what's going to happen next. Now, Donald Trump obviously learned the bad lesson from his success in the criminal area, that he could completely lift his leg on the federal court system. I got news for him. This is now civil matters, right? And this is now black-robed federal judges who aren't your handpicked chosen successor and are now against your administration. And you're not going to be able to do what you did before. And federal judges are letting you know that. Here's the notice of compliance. Now, again, to frame it, 2 separate federal judges, one in the District of Columbia named Ali Khan, one in Rhode Island named McConnell, have both blocked Donald Trump's administration's efforts to turn off the flow of funds to not-for-profits and states to fund their programs. Everything that happened, we go back in time, if you will, to January 20th. That's the status quo. We got a block on 2 different orders. To object to this order, we already see a filing made, and wait till you hear who filed it. Brett Shumate. Who's Brett Shumate? The same acting attorney general or acting assistant attorney general on the losing end of the birthright citizenship filing in Seattle, Washington a couple of weeks ago. He's on a losing streak. But here's what he says to Judge McConnell. You got to have brass ones to write this one. The order contains several ambiguous terms and provisions that could be read to constitute significant intrusions on the executive branch, the president's lawful authorities, and the separation of power. In other words, we can't understand plain English, Your Honor. Really? I don't think there's anything at all about Judge McConnell's order that is ambiguous or that can't be properly interpreted. But to them, they just can't understand it. And if we read it a certain way, you might be violating our own powers. But they go on to tell the judge to go F off. They tell the judge that given that the plaintiffs only challenge the Office of Management and Budget memo, and that they do not read the order to prevent the president from communicating with federal agencies or the public about his priorities in federal spending. The only branch of government that's allowed to handle spending, appropriations, the purse strings, is Congress, not the president. But they go on, nor do defendants construe the order as enjoining or blocking the president's executive orders, which are plainly lawful and unchallenged in this case. What are they talking about? What are they smoking? The executive orders are at the heart of the case. They're at the heart of the injunction. The executive order that tried to block all federal funding to states and not-for-profits. Further, they go on. Defendants do not read the order as imposing compliance obligations on federal agencies that are not defendants in the case. All federal agencies are defendants in the case because Donald Trump's administration is a defendant in the case. I couldn't even put pen to paper and write something like this as an officer of the court and not be sanctioned. When I get an order of temporary restraint, and I've had a couple against clients, I've handled about a dozen of them in my career. I've never challenged. I mean, there might be some stray language that you need to have cleaned up by the judge, but I never started with, "We don't understand your English, judge, and we don't interpret this as affecting us at all, or going to the heart of the matter, or even applying to the other departments of the government." Well, what to which I ask this question: what do you think the order does? What do you think the temporary restraining order that Judge McConnell issued is, if it's not against the executive order against Donald Trump and applies to all those agencies? That's going to be where Judge McConnell, no doubt, is going to go during the public hearing on Thursday. And I'll report on the results of it here. But that's not the only acting out that we've seen. Look, we already got the Department of Justice and the FBI battling it out in broad daylight. We've got members of the FBI leadership who were Biden holdovers telling the Department of Justice, led by right now, well, now it's Pam Bondi, but a day ago it was Emil Bove, the acting attorney general, assistant attorney general, and telling him they are not going to turn over the list of names of the FBI agents that worked on Jan 6th. They're not doing that. They have done a version of it, but not that. And we're not going to start firing people. And telling them to F off. Now the FBI agents have filed 2 lawsuits, mainly in the District of Columbia, against the firings and against the Department of Justice, while Kash Patel looks the Senate in the eye and says, "I don't know anything about political retribution firings." As they're going on, really open up any major daily or watch the Midas Touch Network, Kash, and you might learn a thing or two. So you've got that going on, that chaos going on. At the same time, you've got positions taken in court, like when Brett Shumate, the same guy here, when he appeared in court in front of Judge Koffanor in Seattle and got an injunction against him. It was the first one. He's on a terrible losing streak. Great for democracy, rule of law, though. The judge says, "Oh, stop right there," after he announced his appearance. Brett Shumate, acting Assistant Attorney General for the Department of Justice, Your Honor, for the United States of America. Okay. Let me ask you a question. This was the hearing. Do you think the executive order taking away the birthright citizenship of somebody born on U.S. soil is constitutional? That was the first question. And he said, "Absolutely, Your Honor. Look at these extreme positions, shredding any credibility that they have in front of the court for now, in this case, and for future cases." Now, whenever the Department of Justice comes in, there'll be quiet snickering among the federal bench, especially in the District of Columbia, that was shocked by Donald Trump the first time around, shocked in his criminal cases, shocked by the 1,600 criminal cases against Jan 6 people that they watched, shocked by the sentencing, shocked by the evidence, and shocked by the pardons. And now it's time for them to respond. And so you've got Shumate saying that, and Judge Koffanor said to him, "You think that's constitutional? That executive order? It's the most blatantly unconstitutional thing I've ever seen, and I can't believe a member of the federal bar, a lawyer, would take that position in my courtroom." And it went downhill from there. Recently, there's another appearance, two more appearances that indicate to me, as a practitioner, a federal court officer, a federal practitioner of trial law, indicates to me that the Department of Justice doesn't even believe their own BS. They don't even believe in their own cases. In the case that just came out, in an order that came out last night, a temporary restraining order, written by Royce Lamperth, who was appointed, 40 years ago by Ronald Reagan, in which he put a stop with a temporary restraining order. that's the third of four, or the fourth of four temporary restraining orders, against Donald Trump's attempts to harm and retaliate against transgender people. He's done that in a series of orders. He just ordered universities to deny transgender people, people who have transitioned, the right to play sport by a ruling under Title VII, which he's just ordered them. He ordered that there's only two genders. He's ordered the removal of transgender people from the military, and he's ordered the people who are transgender, let's say women, that they have to be housed in male population prisons. These are all constitutional law violations. And, it will be so declared at some time in the future. So while he's going after transgender people, he wanted, as I said, any man who transitioned into a transgender woman, he wants them at great expense of life and limb and to go to live in the male population of a prison. Think about what will happen. Royce Lampert, the judge, did, and he said it was cruel and unusual punishment to do that, and he entered a temporary restraining order to stop it. Now, by the way, there's only 18 transgender people who are in the federal prisons. 18. We're not talking about a big problem, but to those people, it's everything. But I'll just show you how all of Donald Trump's public policies are so warped. He creates this giant attack on DEI and transgender people to address 18 people in prison. So Royce Lampert, in entering the order, noted that the Trump administration and its Department of Justice did not disagree. It actually conceded on major points that made it easy to issue the temporary restraining order. He said in his order, the Trump administration acknowledges that somebody who's got who's transgender will be at risk, to heightened risk of being maimed, killed, raped, sexually assaulted in prison. Trump administration admitted that because they don't care, because they're callous. And they also admitted that somebody who's got a transgender situation, their psychological trauma is made worse by being put in a male prison if they're a woman. And so this is just an acknowledgement that A, they don't care. B, their callousness and animus, it just totally pollutes their thinking and all their presentations to the courts, making them not coherent or reliable advocates or trustworthy advocates in court because of these outrageous decisions. And then I got a new decision in which another, in the same courthouse in D.C., but another Department of Justice judge, a Judge Reyes, who's out as a lesbian and a judge, she had to deal with transgender in the military in a temporary restraining order, which she's going to grant. And at a hearing, the Department of Justice took the position that it would be okay if the policy was being passed out of hatred and prejudice for transgender people. And the judge says, under what constitutional analysis is that appropriate? And the lawyer wasn't even prepared to say that the ruling in which Donald Trump said he's going to, reverse course on transgender and turn their world upside down, how that prejudice statements, how that could undermine the order, his executive order, because it violates the Constitution. And to which the lawyer said, I don't think it's relevant. She said, and the judge said, you don't think it's relevant that this would be expressed prejudice and retaliation against a group of people? Go read the Constitution. So they don't care. They're flouting the rules of the Department of Justice. The Department of Justice is flouting the rules of federal judges, saying they don't understand orders that are clear on their face, taking ridiculous positions in court that quickly get dispatched. And this will be helpful to us into the future, because the less credibility they have, that means the judges are going to be careful to put their feet to the fire and not take anything for granted and not give them any benefit of the doubt in any of their arguments. And wait till John Sauer comes in as the Solicitor General, who used to be Donald Trump's leading criminal appellate lawyer. Wait till he opens his mouth in front of the United States Supreme Court and he makes some ridiculous positions, trying to tie the court and its brain up in knots, because this is where they're going to be. Outrageous. And it's up to federal judges in the District of Columbia, up and down the East Coast, up and down the West Coast, to hold them accountable. And don't take anything they say at face value. I'm Michael Popok. You're here on Legal AF. Let's continue the march to 500,000 in our half birthday right here on Legal AF. So until my next reporting, I'm Michael Popok. In collaboration with the Midas Touch Network, we just launched the Legal AF YouTube channel. Help us build this pro-democracy channel where I'll be curating the top stories at the intersection of law and politics. Go to YouTube now and free subscribe at Legal AF MTN. That's at Legal AF MTN.